A very good afternoon to all of you. I'm Ankita from NASSCOM, and I'm back with another interesting episode from the NASSCOM Product Connects GTM series. Today's topic is Supercharging Your Demand Generation, Some Principles, Hacks, and Examples. The session will be presented by Kingshuk Hazra, founder, LeadStrategus. Two more things from my side. Please be curious and ask questions anytime during the session. Kingshuk will cater to most of them on as in and when basis, even during the presentation. And please do not forget to leave your feedback to help me better my future sessions. Welcome, Kingshuk, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Ankita. Good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to be speaking with you today. We have hopefully a very interesting session ahead. So the topic of this session is supercharging your demand generation. Some principles, hacks, and examples. So I'm going to cover a broad swathe of area across sales, marketing, the demand gen side of things. Hopefully we will be on time to the extent we can. And feel free to put in your questions as and when they arise. I'll try to answer as many of them as I can. So to get introduced, my name is Kingshuk Hazra. Why am I here with you? I bring around 20 years of experience primarily in demand generation, and I've been the guinea pig or the lucky guy to be the first or second or third marketing, business development, or research guy in companies like SAP, Amazon, Oracle Consulting, Pluralsight, when they had in their early days. Over the last 2 years, I've been running this demand generation firm called LeadStrategus. We consult and execute demand generation projects. Also, I mean, as a part of my work, I get to speak with hundreds of founders, sales VPs, and CMOs every year. So there's a lot of interesting insight. I learn more from them than they learn from me, I suspect. But I'm here to share my crystallized learning with you and hopefully learn also a few things from you. So to get started, let's talk about. I talked about why I listened to Kingshuk. So let's get into also hear from you. Let's hear from you. Let's understand a little bit more about you. So Ankita, if you could have the first survey question up, that would be quite exciting for us.
Sure.
So we want you to answer, what's your role? What's the role which best suits you? So a screen will open up, which will allow you to put the poll elements in it.
Kingshuk, can you also see the percentages and everything?
I can't seem to see the poll right now, but okay. I think I'll. You can guide me. I mean.
All right. So now I'm closing the polls. So let me just give you the percentages. 17% says founder CEOs, 18% sales head, 8% marketing head, 42% sales/marketing head, and 14 others.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ankita. So I think we have a fair mix of sales and marketing and founder CEOs. Just the trifecta of folks I wanted to have on this webinar. Wonderful. So let's move on to the next survey question. What kind of companies do you come from? This is for the first 2A is for the services folks. If you're from product, just hold on. We'll ask that again in the next question. The service software doesn't take more than 5 answers. So Ankita, you might open out survey 2A if you can, yeah. Please.
So I've started. I'm closing it now, and the answers are 13% large services firm, 30% mid services, 33% small, 13% services startups, and 11% others.
Okay, I suspect many of the folks who are in products might have called themselves as services, but nevertheless, So if you're not I mean, in this question, what I was expecting was if you're a product company, you'd click on others, but never mind. Ankita, let's have the survey 2B, the next one out there.
Sure. What kind of company do you represent? All right. So here I launched the third question for you. I'm closing the poll now.
Okay.
And the answers are 15% large product or SaaS, 17% mid, 34% small product, 17% product startup, and 17% others.
Okay. So if I got your results correctly, a big chunk of you are mid to small product startups, and a big chunk of you are mid services firms. So we've got a good feeling of you, and as we go along, we will talk more of maybe your answers come from your role and where you come from. So what I'm going to cover is talk about demand generation at its core. I'm going to share with you a story of App Dynamics, how they grew from $1 million to $300 million in 22 quarters, as told by Jyoti Bansal, their founder. I'm also going to share with you some lessons from product market fit journeys, which we have seen at LeadStrategus. And then we'll come to the eternal questions which a marketeer or a salesperson always ask when they talk with each other. What tactic works best? What campaign worked best for you? So we'll go a little bit deeper into that. We'll also have some polls to look at what you're thinking on that. Then we're going to go into our LinkedIn best practices journey, and then we're going to talk a little bit about sales culture, and then talk about personal productivity. That's the broad agenda. So bear with me as we go through it. Now, talking about demand generation, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I got into demand generation in the 5th year of my 20-year career, where I joined SAP. At that time, SAP was going through a very crazy 3 figures growth rate year after year. SAP just added the mid-market all-in-one in the early days, and in the next year they added Business One, which is the small enterprises product. Now, what happened was, as SAP started adding these products, they expected the marketing team, so I was running the demand gen for SAP marketing, to take the maximum load of these mid-market and small enterprises customers. SAP was also adding a lot of channel partners, and the expectation was that the central organization, the marketing organization, to feed them as much leads as they can. So what was also interesting was, by the end of those 2-3 years, we were contributing nearly 50% of the total number of deals. The value it was probably 40% or less, but we put in a system wherein we were generating a huge amount of deals from tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 towns all across the country. And one of the reasons we did that, we were able to have this business development team, which didn't close deals, but would work on leads, mid-market and large enterprise leads across the country. So I had around 7 people in the early days and 15 at its height, where people were in tier 2, tier 3 towns, and they would be traveling to all states of the country between themselves and generate a huge amount of leads for the company. What worked for us most was we put in a system and a big, strong focus on lead generation, lead nurturing. So we had we had our outsourced telemarketing engine. We had this lead qualification, these marketeers who used to travel on the ground, and then we had the sales organization. So we were able to put in some best practices which ensured that we are able to contribute a huge proportion of the deals which were closing on account of the market expansion which was happening those days. So one of the things which I was able to do then was I had the regular weekly cadence happening between, at one end, the telemarketer and the lead qualifiers, and then again between lead qualifiers and the sales team. And we ensured that no lead went waste, and every lead got its feedback. So we were able to ensure that each of the leads which were passed on were numerically rated on these band scores. So, but if you follow lead qualification, there is this pretty old concept called budget authority need timeline solution, on the basis of which you rate the quality of a lead. So what we were able to do was, every lead which we used to generate, a telemarketer used to generate for a lead qualifier and a lead qualifier for a salesperson, had to be objectively rated on a score of 1 to 5 on each of these categories. Only if it passed a total of cumulative higher score than each of these would it get passed on to the next level. So trying to make this very subjective enterprise objective, lead scoring at that time, 15 years back, nobody used to talk about, was a big game changer for us. Also, we used to create a data warehouse. We used to keep looking at leads. We used to keep talking with leads. And when a new salesperson or a new territory got opened up, we would do this huge activity of using tele plus campaigns plus flying down a lead qualifier in that region and generating leads out of that. Again, we used to do that at scale at a low price because India is still a pretty cost-effective economy. But if you could focus on these metrics and ensure that all leads are dealt with properly, and if anything gets rejected, it needs to be rejected within a certain time frame, within a week, and there's a reason why they're getting rejected, this closed loop demand gen worked pretty well for us. Another interesting thing which we were doing at that time was, when these leads were generated and passed on, we used to do this information management. The idea was that prospects want to know more about you. And again, 10, 15 years back, remember, internet was not that data intense. There weren't that much information. If you searched on Google on lead qualification best practices, you'd probably get a few pages, not the hundreds or thousands of pages that you get now. But so what we sought out to do was understand what kind of questions were coming. A CIO would ask about, give me information on why does this product work with my existing other systems, or a CFO would ask for ROI. You'd anticipate that and create assets, which would make it very easy for at a telemarketing level, at a lead qualification level, to hand off this information so that the lead qualification and the conversations happen much better even before a salesperson gets in touch with the particular lead. So that is something which worked very closely through us. The reason I'm talking about this is that effective lead closing is a brahmastra which we tend to ignore quite a few times. Very soon you're going to find that if you're doing a lot of lead generation, you're going to run out of companies to go after. This makes it much easier for you to manage that. Again, this talked about a closed loop campaign management, which we used to do. Again, information management on the top right is something which is the most important part of that. But we had to ensure that everything is closed loop. That's the only way we had that feedback and that knowledge brought into the system. The other thing which we were doing, and this is something which I insisted in all the large companies. So I worked with SAP, I worked with Pluralsight, I worked with Amazon Web Services. I insisted in each of those organizations that a salesperson needs to know which assets they need to give at what time. If you dump a huge treasure trove of information or nuggets to them and expect them to pick out all of that on your own, they are not going to be able to make that work. So you have to classify and understand each of the buyers, the kind of questions they ask at each stage, and offer information on that in an easy to use format for the salesperson to ensure that the good work your product teams or marketing teams are doing in producing information about how unique you are or the challenges a buyer faces is taken to the customer. So this was something which we were able to do better. Now, we're going to move into the next part, which is the science of enterprise sales. But before that, I just want to take a pause. Ankita, are there any questions here which you want to bring out at this stage by any chance?
Just have a look. As of now, there are no questions, Kingshuk. We are good to go.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ankita. So having talked about the process, the core of demand generation, which is leads, which is the interaction between sales and marketing, I'm going to go deeper into this very inspiring story of App Dynamics, Mr. Jyoti Bansal, who started this company, which about a year back or so got bought over by Cisco at over $3 billion. So he was a techie, and he was very, very skeptical about sales in the early days, but he was able to find some very smart sales leaders who taught him some principles of sales, which allowed him to make, I mean, I think all of you would agree that sales is more of an art, or is a mix of art and science. But he believed, after his experience by learning from the sales leaders whom he hired, that sales is more of a science. He called it the science of enterprise sales, and that's the name of the article which he put out on LinkedIn. So if you search on that, you'll be able to find it. So let me tell you the story. He talked about 5 things at the core of how he grew his company from $1 million to $300 million in 22 quarters, which is 5.5 years. And he talked about 5 things which allowed him to do that. So he said that first of all, obviously, you need to have your goal. I think all founders today's age have a goal that this is my revenue target. This is how I'm going to achieve that in this much time with this much deals. I'm going to reach there. So this is something which I think a lot of you would be doing that. Then he talked about this concept of productive sales capacity. What he meant by this was, if you are looking at, if you can be very sure about hiring a certain amount of trained sales reps, you know how many of them are, you know how much time you take to get them active, you know the churn in them, and you are training them really well, they will operate at capacity and they'll be able to offer a very predictable way to generate your sales pipeline and close your sales pipeline. He talked about that. Then he talked about the demand generation model, wherein he talked about, again, the total number of qualified opportunities, the average deal size, the opportunity to deal ratio, how you break out your revenue targets based on opportunity. I'm sure most of you here would be doing a little bit of that. Then he talked about sales process, where he said that you can hire the best salespeople, you can train them, but unless you are very sure of how they are working on the ground, everything kind of falls flat. So he talked about a 3 sieves process, wherein you try to first find out that salesperson vis-a-vis an inside salesperson is only working on the most qualified opportunities. I know many of you who are starting out would say that I don't think I have that many leads today, but if you are working in an environment where there's a huge number of leads, then you have to ensure that your closers are working on the most qualified opportunities. And then he did those things like business case to ROI fitment. Then they would go and map the customer very well so that the surprises are less, and they predict the deal closer ratios absolutely right. And then he talked about growth constraint, which allowed him to think through the normal constraints we face. So we start out with something, we are not sure whether there is enough demand or not. Then we found that if there is enough demand, we might find that the competitive position, our competitive position is not that strong. There are too many players, Me Too players out there. Then let's say you overcome that barrier. Then you might have that constraint that you need much more cash than you're willing to spend to grow, or you have to invest much ahead to grow. And today the market is there with a lot of these companies which have burnt much more cash than they are able to generate, and there are too many memes going around talking about that. And of course, the last constraint is that there are not enough trained sales reps out there. So he talked about the science of enterprise sales, by which he grew the company from 1 mil to 300 mil. I'd encourage all of you to go on link to do a search, Google search, you'll get it. Search on his name, search on science of enterprise sales, you'll get this article. But here is a person who's from outside, who's a techie founder. He brought into the concept, and he grew his company and made it work using these concepts, which most of us, or many of us would have heard about, but he made these work together. So this is the science of enterprise sales, which he talked about. Having talked about that, we are going to move towards the the next part. But before that, again, Ankita, I'll take a break to check if any of you have any questions on this.
Yes, I have a few questions, Kingshuk. Yeah.
Yes.
The first one is by Jaya. She's asking how to generate leads for Java or .NET software support service.
Okay. So,
All right.
shall I try answering that? Okay.
Yeah.
So Jaya, see, again, services is different from product. The important thing about services is you have to first understand who are the buyers which you are looking at. Is it and is it a CIO kind of person who's going to buy your kind of services? Is it one or two levels lower? Is it a project manager? Is it uh, a team lead? What is the designation of the actual buyer who's going to buy your kind of services? Then you have to see if when you have got that, you have to understand a day in their life, what kind of challenges they face, where do they, what is it they worry about. Then you have to figure out where they hang out with. Then you try to reach out to them in that geography, or you do a lot of thought leadership, which I'm going to talk about later, which appeals to someone who has the pain which your solution can solve. We'll talk through more examples and the process of how to do that. If by the end of this presentation, your question doesn't get answered, we'll reach out to me, we will talk offline. So this was the science of enterprise sales. Having talked about that, we're going to start getting into the product market fit part. And I have a question, a survey again for Ankita to open out. So my question here is, what do you think, if you're an early stage founder, you need to do to build your product market fit? Do you, Ankita, if you may open the question, I think we have opened it out.
The next question is, what is the most important way to build product market fit for an early stage founder? And here I launched the question for all of you.
So the first answer was sales. The second one is growth hacking and digital marketing. The third answer stem is use case, personas, messaging. The fourth one is the basics of marketing, and the fifth one is getting the early customers.
All right. I am now closing the poll question. And the answers which I got are 3% build an awesome sales engine, 6% do fab, growth hacking and digital marketing, 24% research use case, 31% get the basics of marketing right first, and 38% focus on getting the early customer.
Very, very interesting. So I think we have a very sophisticated audience here. Not all of you are saying that sales engine and growth hacking are going to give you the leads and the opportunities. Yes, you have to focus on the early stage customer. I think majority of you said get the early stage customer. Then a big chunk of you said researching use cases, personas, and pinpoint messaging. Absolutely. A big chunk of you also said marketing, right? So bang on. We're going to focus as we go along more on how to do this use case and personas and pinpoint messaging. So to get started on the product market fit journey, there's a very interesting blog post which is floating out in the internet, which talks about think of how do you build a large business. So if you have to build a $100 million business, you need to sell 100K solutions to 1,000 customers. So you need to hunt elephants. You need to find 1,000 elephants to build a $100 million business. On the other end of the scale, you need to find, let's say your deal size is just $10 per year. You need to hunt 10,000 mosquitoes, and that's a bee or a mosquito, I don't know, but I'm calling that a mosquito. You need to hunt for 10,000 mosquitoes to get the same deal, which means that some deals will require a huge amount of effort. So typically the elephant side of things, you have senior sales engines, you have dedicated hunt teams, it's primarily sales led. And at the other extreme, it is primarily digital marketing and growth hacking led. So if you're a services company, a large services company, you are in the elephant side of things. If you are a product startup, which is to a very utilitarian kind of software where you just the deal size is very less. You need to go after these mosquitoes. It has to be self-service model. So this is something which you need to keep in mind. But one of the challenges which I see, and we've been talking with a few customers and friends in the market, is many a times you think that your product is as easy to buy as the one which is targeting mosquitoes, but you end up spending a huge amount of sales efforts to reach that. So a case in point is one of our the customers we work with, they were selling a 50,000 rupees SaaS solution, which is per year for supply chain. But the problem was, to sell this solution, they had to reach to the CIO and the CEO of mid-sized and large companies, which meant they had to travel down, they had to have a 3-4 month sales cycle, and the price was not worth it. So you have to be very careful of which segment which you choose. It's not, revenue is not just a function of your annual revenues from the customer and the total number of customers, but the efforts required to sell, and particularly in a geography context, and particularly if you're selling to India, your sales costs must be much higher because customers are not used to that digital buying. So that's something which we found out. Also, I put out a question on LinkedIn, I think 6-7 months back, and I challenged people, if there's anybody who's sold a solution which is more than 15,000 rupees or 20,000 rupees using digital hacking only in the India market, without using sales, without using inside sales, I'll give you an award. That award is still unclaimed. What I'm trying to say by that is, there are certain solutions like Atlassian, like MailChimp, where people, and this is Atlassian, you're looking at ANZ, Australia, where it started out with, or MailChimp, North America. SMBs are much more sophisticated in terms of their comfort in buying stuff from the internet. So Atlassian and MailChimp, if they were to target the India market first, my sense is that they would have fallen flat. They succeeded because they targeted North America and ANZ, where the people density is not that much, but people don't need that face-to-face kind of selling. So you have to be very careful that if you're selling solutions which are low touch, you have to do digital marketing and growth hacking. But if you're selling expensive software or services, large $1 million deal kind of services, you have to have small number of salespeople who are really doing a huge amount of personalized reach out. So this is something which I wanted to bring out to you. The other thing when you're talking about product market fit is timelines. All of us have heard the stories of YouTube or Slack or Dropbox. Now Slack isn't doing very well right now, but again, all these three companies stand out because they typically got a huge amount of growth, which is achieving product market fit in 4 to 5 years. Now, and which is 4 to 5 years, not 1-2 years, 4 to 5 years. Now, most founders, product founders, when they launch, they think they can do that in 5 years. So that's that small one where you think you will be. If you also look at this heavily funded, loss-making, big e-commerce plays, they spend a huge amount of dollars to get the product market fit. When they're going to get profitability, gross profitability over time, very few of us can hazard a guess very intelligently. Then you look at most products which are launched by large companies, they also take a lot of reasonably long amount of investment and a certain amount of time to sell. And if you remember the story of Zoho, which many people are calling an overnight success over the last 1 or 2 years, they started 24 years back. So it took them 20 years to be an overnight success. So keep that in mind. So if you get a reasonable midterm growth path, it means you're lucky. You have done a lot of, earned a lot of punya in this life and past life by doing the right things, because of which you have been able to grow so much. So this is another thing which you need to keep in mind when you're thinking of product market fit. Having talked about that, so when we work with many of these customers, we try to create what we call as a go-to market to meet their product market gap. So the way we do this is you have to map the buyer. You have to understand who are the buyers. You have to understand the use cases these guys have. You have to understand the pain points these customers have, and on that basis, you create a messaging which is most appropriate for them. Similarly, you have to understand the competition. You have to understand their value proposition and their features. You have to map out where it stands, and then you have to create something which is very unique and different from that. This is easier said than done, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it when we talk about some messaging later, how we made this, how we do the messaging so that you're able to stand out and appeal to specific buyer segments. So this is customer lifecycle journey. Again, I'm going to, so having talked about go-to-market and product market fit, I'm going to take a break to check if any of you guys have any questions. Ankita?
Yeah, hi, Kingshuk. We have few more questions. One is by Rohit. He's asking, what product marketing literature can you suggest for SaaS startups?
I will cover this with an example, Rohit. Just hang on till the end. I'll talk about what we did for one of our customers.
There are few more questions, Kingshuk. You want me to speak out, or you want to continue with the session?
Okay, let's continue. Let's come back to these later.
Sure.
Thanks, Ankita. So moving on, having talked about go-to-market, we are going to come to that part where you're talking about marketing channels. Which marketing channel? This is a favorite topic of marketeers and CMOs. Which marketing channel works best for you? So Ankita, you want to throw up survey number 4, where I'm going to ask, love to hear from you, all of you. What is your most effective demand gen channel? So there is digital. Sorry, Ankita, go ahead, please.
Shall I launch it?
Yes, please.
All right. So here I go. I'm closing the question now. All right. So the answers are 42% digital ads, PPC, SEO, 10% events, 12% tele, 23% content, and 12% social reach out.
Okay. So this is interesting. I expected a little bit of an answer like this. I'm going to take a very, very contrarian line to what most of you have been speaking about. See, the first thing you want to remember is that channels come and channels go. So there was telephone, there was email, there's LinkedIn. So certain channels reach a certain level of popularity and then they start going down. In my worldview, you have to write the channel at the right time. Telephone was effective 30 years back. Today, you still have to telephone, but to generate a lead, if you're an unknown company using just outbound telecalling, is not the bravest of all options. Similarly, if you are going to use, let's say, content, again, I'm a big fan of content, and we're going to talk what kind of why content is becoming so important now. But the most important part I wanted to talk about is that just digital marketing or growth hacking by themselves is never going to be enough unless you are Atlassian or a MailChimp. As I talked about a little bit earlier, digital marketing helps in getting top of the funnel, and it helps you getting interest, But unless you have a human being which is talking with them, and as a marketeer, and particularly as a marketeer, if you're thinking that digital marketing is by itself enough, I would like to say that probably not. You have to have the human touch. Now, if you're passing that on without a human tele touch or a field marketing touch to a salesperson, you have lost control of that lead. So that's just by digital or having someone from a large company download a lot of material from your website doesn't mean that they've given you the permission to bombard them with marketing messages or hand them off as a lead to a salesperson. So I would like to kind of take a different track from what most of you are saying, which is digital marketing per se is not something which is enough. Now, events are something which are again very, very interesting. I think a big chunk of you said events. And you can make events to work, particularly if your deal size are relatively larger and you have smart salespeople who are there to make it work. I had this colleague from one of my previous organizations who would be brilliant in getting to meet the CEO or the CIO or the CHRO in those events where they were speaking. So you'd understand this guy, you'd understand this guy's speech, and then when the speech was over, there are 10 people who are waiting to meet the speaker. You would be able to make his way through them, have an intelligent conversation, and then land a meeting. So for us, whenever we did an event where this guy went, and this guy just went as a networker, not even without a booth, he was able to turn around the event ROI like crazy for us. So that was something which was very interesting. The other thing which I wanted to talk about is tele. So tele as an outbound channel is definitely not the most effective channel to start with, but to validate and check whether the lead is genuine or not, and not to get beaten up by sales that your lead is not very high quality, tele is important. So I would suggest that if you have some budget, whatever budget you have, and particularly if you have a hungry sales organization, you need to have a tele which is into marketing, even one person who's qualifying these leads physically before you're handing this off to the salespeople. So that would be my strong recommendation. And again, I'm going to show a little bit more about content in a moment. Despite the noise, content is the ultimate, most powerful force multiplier, because to make your social selling work, your digital ads work, to make your SEO work, your messaging work, you have to start with content. And where does your content come from? As I was saying before, a messaging framework which has been created for the buyer personas, which is again based on the use case and the problems which you're trying to solve, and a value prop which is unique from that of your other place in the market. So content is the most important thing, and we're going to talk again a little bit more about how to do content and how to do content which makes you stand out. So again, content, you have to do both value and volume. You have to focus on creating very high quality content, but obviously you know that you can't produce high quality content on a daily basis. I mean, people are going to get tired of that. What I would recommend is do volume also, but focus on rehashing the value content as much as you can. See if you can do for example, what I'm going to do with NASSCOM's permission after this is to post this. They're going to post this on YouTube for you to look at. We might post a slide share version of this. We might post the survey which you guys participated in and say what do Indian founders and companies think of sales tactics, marketing tactics. So any content which you produce takes high quality content. If it takes a lot of value to produce, you can create that, recreate that into multiple bite-sized pieces and use that multiple times. So focus on content. So again, I'm nearing the end of the marketing section. We'll talk about marketing again from a sales messaging and the LinkedIn angle, but I just wanted to take a pause and check if there are any other questions which on marketing which you might have fresh in your minds, which Ankita might want to ask.
Yeah. There's another question. What is the thumb rule for the marketing budget as percentage of target revenue for a SaaS product?
That's a very interesting question. There have been a huge amount of debates within SaaS organizations or any kind of organization. How much percentage of my revenue, how much percentage of my company revenue should be spent on marketing? Now, I have been with some organizations where in the early days, their brand name helped them move a lot. At the same time, I have seen some companies which spend a huge amount of budget, marketing and budget. First of all, if you are B2C, you have to spend a huge amount of your revenues on marketing, maybe 30, 40% more. If you're B2B and SaaS, it depends a little bit on how crowded your market or your field is, or how unique, or how early you are coming in the product life cycle. If you're one of the earliest players, so if you're like Amazon Web Services in the early days, 2010, 2005, you've got a market made for yourself. You don't need to spend too much money on marketing. But if you are a Google Cloud or a Software or the fourth or fifth player in the market, your budget goes up substantially. So your marketing budget is a function of the product life cycle, the stage you are in, the category, how crowded it is, and also your leaders, your CEO founders, comfort level of spending. There are some CEO founders have come across to say, look, we have to do a very expensive thought leadership, events-led approach to make a mark, and so in that case, the marketing budget goes up 30%, 40% in many cases in the early days. Whereas if companies are more maybe sales focused or more stingier or more financial controls led, then they say, no, we are not going to spend that much. So then it's 5%, 10%. There are companies who spend 2.5% of their total revenues on marketing budget and do that pretty well. Awesome question. We'll continue and we'll come back to your questions a moment later. So now moving on to the sales leaders. And again, Ankita, I request you to open up survey number 5 for the audience. So which tactic do most of your sales team members regularly use? Now, this is not a radio box. It's a multiple choice. So you can click more than one answer. Maybe you want to roll off the answers now, Ankita?
So 32% meet prospects face-to-face, 8% are able to spend hours on the phone, 30% write highly customized emails, 30% use LinkedIn for connections and intelligence, 0% for the last one.
Okay, interesting. I think the audience is more towards non-sales people, in the sense 0% is saying they don't use too many prospecting tools. Either this is the case, or you need to think of ramping up your usage of these freemium sales tools like Hunters or Built With. Meeting prospects face-to-face, as I talked about, is if a salesperson is skillful enough, remember, he or she has to be skillful. He or she has to be able to network and strike a rapport and make intelligent, non-irritating conversation with prospects in events. That works. And obviously, traditionally, a salesperson is always supposed to meet face-to-face. Not too many people are able to spend hours on the phone with prospects, absolutely. So that's perfectly fine. Highly customized email and messages. Ankita, I missed that number. Can you just read that out again?
Pardon, highly, just a sec. It is 30 higher. Which one you're asking?
Highly customized emails and messages.
30%. Both 30%. Use LinkedIn and write highly customized emails, 30%.
Okay, wonderful. I'm glad to see that so many of you are saying this is something which your team does regularly. And as we go along, I'm going to share some more tips on how to do that. So this is one question which I wanted to ask you. The other question which I'm going to ask you, again, Ankita, you might have to roll out the survey. is what's the most important skill for a salesperson to have?
Sure. So this is the question. Yep. Launched.
This is the radio button, only one, not many.
Also, just want to share that only 15 minutes are left for the session.
Yes, Ankita, we will roll along fast.
Yeah, so I'm just closing this question as well. Yeah, 58% says relationship builder, 20% challenger salesperson, 27% problem solver, 9% thought leader, 4% researcher.
Okay, very, very interesting to find this answer. I think I'm now confident that we don't have too many full-time salespeople on this call, because I think a salesperson should want to say that they are challenger salespeople most of the times. Now, if you ask me, relationship builder is something which used to happen quite a bit. It's now hygiene. You have to be a challenger who's asking those difficult questions and able to build rapport at the same time. Problem solving is something which is what everybody has to do. A good salesperson has to do. It's given. It's the thought leader where we did a social selling workshop a few months back in Delhi, and one of the customers, the sales leaders, just said, "You are expecting me to be a thought leader. I refuse to be one." So I understand that perfectly. Not too many salespeople are willing to be the thought leaders. But here, if you're a CEO founder, I want to beseech you, I want to request you that you are the person who has to take the leadership in doing thought leadership on behalf of your company so that your company stands out. I don't know if you've heard this example of this company out of Indore called Engineer Babu. The gentleman who runs that, he is the mascot of the company. He posts regularly on LinkedIn. He's posted regularly on Quora, and he's created a Facebook group for jobs for his target audience, which is developer engineers. And all his leads are incoming. And I mean, even for us, LeadStrategus, we are a small services company. But it's funny for me. The day I know that I write a very good post on LinkedIn, I get a huge amount of incoming leads. So today, with your prospect out there in social media, if you're able to engage with them thoughtfully, intelligently, and in a thought leadership way, there's a very good chance that you have an incoming lead starting flowing in. So I'd encourage all of you to think of being thought leader. Now I'm going to come to a shocker for you. I believe that increasingly being a researcher is going to be a very, very important skill set. And here's why. Making time to know, to research, to talk about your prospects. So you are selling to company X sells to company A. If you understand company A and present what's happening there, what are their pain points, what are they asking for to company X, your company X is your friend for life. So being a researcher of your prospect is a very important skill to have. And now I'm going to give you 2 tips to be able to be quickly likable using this research skills. This is a gentleman called Vikram Bharadwaj who's posted on LinkedIn. He says that it takes me 2 minutes to make a friend of people anywhere in the world. In just a few seconds, he's able to build a rapport, and by the end of the conversation, there is a very strong relationship. How does he do that? He's been doing that because he's been reading newspapers of different countries, understanding what's happening locally. And based on that, he has a very good ground level understanding of what's happening in their geography. Based on that, he's able to be very genuine and strike a very good rapport with his prospects. I'm going to move on to the next part in terms of just running out of time. How should you, if you're an ISE and you're trying to reach out to CXOs, how do you reach out to them in a way using research so that you're able to get that meeting? So at LeadStrategus, we do outsource social selling, and one of the things which we get also asked for is to create messages for our prospects, for our customers, for their prospects. So the way we approach this is, Again, this is the LinkedIn approach, and I'm going to explain the LinkedIn approach in detail in a moment. You have to learn to connect using a very personalized, and again, in the past sessions on which Ankita did, there were speakers who talked about this. You can find more about LinkedIn messaging use in our website and in my LinkedIn, in my LeadStrategus blog. But it's a very sequential approach by which you connect with LinkedIn, expressing honest interest, and then you are giving them stuff which is of use to them. And how do you do that? By finding something from Forbes, Harvard Business Review, McKinsey, or anything which is thought leadership for your industry, any content which is going to resonate with them. A day in the life. How do I solve this unique Java problem, Jaya? You have to find some, again, it need not be yours. I call it stealing with credits content. The more you do that, the more you're able to find this and create messages which are going to resonate with your audience, something which they're going to die for. Imagine you do this twice, thrice, they're going to eat out of your hands, and it's going to be very easy for you to get them to a meeting to you. So that's something which we recommend, and these are some of the things which we have been doing based on the product, based on the buyer persona, based on the industries. We find very good thought leadership articles written by these brand names. We might be a very small brand, but we're associating with these large brands by sharing their content with complete due credit to them. And then we keep sending these messages, and over time we say, can I get you to talk with a colleague of mine who has done this MDM implementation at 40 different companies? Then the glide path to getting a meeting becomes very, very easy. This slide is going to get posted by Ankita after some time, so please do have a look at that. I'm now going to jump quickly through our LinkedIn best practices, what we do, where we mix up account-based marketing and social selling. And again, as you know, in today's world, emails don't work. If you're selling to Europe or any European entity, privacy laws are not going to allow you to. Most of us use free callers. Social reach outs, before they become ubiquitous, are today's golden arrows. You need more of LinkedIn and less of not less of it. And you need to use that smartly without, after the first connection, sending a stink mail, if I may use that word, which says, I am this, I am that, this is my deck, please let me if you have a requirement. Never ever do that. So LinkedIn has 6 powers. It's an instant messaging medium. You can chat directly. You can see when your prospects are live. We keep doing webinars on LinkedIn, how to use LinkedIn, Sales Navigator. Please, if you need to do that, please ask Ankita or me. We are happy to do more of that. But there are these 6 things which you need to use the power of LinkedIn very, very aggressively. And again, as I talked about, the superpower of LinkedIn is this account-based marketing plus social reach outs, where you do a huge amount of research and you first like or comment on the stuff which your target posts before even you send a connection request to them, so that they start remembering you. Most people want to be thought leaders, want to be liked, but they don't necessarily become one. You help them become one, they immediately get intrigued and interested in you. So you do that. After that, you send this personalized connection message, which talks about something in common or some YouTube video they have done or something they have written. Chances of our acceptance rate of LinkedIn invites, we typically commit to most of our clients 25%, but we end up giving 35%, 40% LinkedIn connects in our social outsourcing projects. So they become first level connections. Then you have to do this usable content, which you keep sending to them, and then you think of some ways you can enchant them, which is going to give you that meeting. Do look at this slide if you're using LinkedIn. You can be a founder, you can be a CEO, you can be a sales person, you can be a marketing person, you can be a customer success person. Please keep revisiting this as a way to use the power of LinkedIn. So now coming towards the end, I'm going to talk about sales culture. Remember, most of the culture which people talk about publicly is not worth the air which they're speaking on. There's too much of self-aggrandizement, self-promotion out there. So the best way to check if a company really has good culture is go to Glassdoor, where the reviews cannot be deleted. So if Glassdoor says something, then you can believe in that. I've been following this company called Zerodha with a lot of interest. Now, This is something which I got by reading the founder CEO's customer letter. Zerodha claims publicly that no employee carries a revenue target. They believe that targets are good but lead to pressure and bad behavior. So they have these happy, well, non-pressurized, well-supervised salespeople who sell more. Now they are big. They have 1 million clients. They're B2C. They have 50K new clients every month. My onboarding experience was spectacular, but I'm happy with the price, the value which I'm getting from them. If you call the customer service number, you will not get too much of selling efforts or too great in English, but they do the job well and they're helpful and they're good. Last, they don't hire the top engineers, the top management institute people. They hire non-branded graduates, treat them well. Both the employees and the employer treats each other well, and they made the processes so good that they don't need nerds or superior brains to run it. That's the story of Zerodha, which I admire from a distance as an outsider. Having talked about sales culture at a very brief level, we are out of time, so I can't tell too many stories. Let's talk about personal productivity. So many of, in the survey earlier, you said that you are not doing much of sales tools. I'd encourage you to explore LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which again, there are decks out there, right from NASSCOM Product Connect to LeadStrategus and on how to use LinkedIn Sales Navigator. If you need me to do a talk with you, always happy to do that. Then you have this Hunter, which allows you to find emails. There is this awesome tool called Bombora, which actually let's say you sell a particular software. You go to Bombora and put the names of competition there. You get a picture of this software tells you which companies are, what kind of competition or what kind of software are people from this particular target considering. That's something which is interesting. Similarly, SimilarWave gives competitive intelligence oriented stuff, and BuiltWith is again an awesome tool which I love because it tells you which web-based software is being run by this particular company. So most companies have external interfaces through the web and the mobile. So this goes there and picks up which software is being run with that. So if you're selling some software or SaaS, this is a God-given tool. Moving on to the last part of it, I've been a big fan of personal productivity. So I've been following Stephen Covey and the family, David Allen, Tony Squart's mindfulness. I've been reading them quite a bit. But to implement them, I have been of late trying out a very interesting new tool, which is Rescue Time, which basically allows, it sits on your laptop and on your mobile, and it tracks the time which you are spending, and you put them in various categories. You can ban websites. For example, I go to news websites a lot. I have put a 40-minute bar on the maximum amount of time I can spend on news websites in a day, so that, and then after that, it will close that, or it will put up something saying you can't go that. It allows, so again, I'm not a fan of Rescue Time per se, though I love the software. I'm a fan of this category. Personal productivity, particularly as a CEO, as a VP sales manager, and even as a startup sales guy, is very, very important. Manage yourself to be most effective, and that's what Peter Drucker is to talk about. Coming to the end, debate on what works in sales and marketing will never end. Everybody will have their own opinion. Check on what works for you, and not using the best practices or technology or tools which are available out there is a sad thing. Be a prisoner of results, not of ideology. And then I end with saying that eternal training, eternal tinkering are the ultimate sources of competitive advantage. And the salesperson or marketeer with the better training, better process, better motivation will always win. That's it from my side. Not sure how much time we have for questions, but Ankita, back to you.
1 minute left, Kingshuk, so we can take one question. So there is one question which has been asked by Dinesh a couple of times during the session. I would like to take one as the last question for our session. It is, I have run sponsored content in LinkedIn and closed 2 deals for HRMS solutions in my past organization. Now I'm currently handling airline revenue management solution here. Digital marketing is not working for me. What can I do in this case? Kindly give me the solution.
And again, Dinesh, a lot of it depends on your objective. Is your objective to get a download of the sponsored content, or are you looking at a much more higher qualified lead? So when we work with very specialized SaaS audience, where we're talking about airlines revenue management, there are probably not more than 300 or 400 airlines in the world. I would recommend that using LinkedIn Sales Navigator, you can find out the buyers, 3 to 4 buyers, buyer personas in each of these 400 companies. You see what they are doing, and then see if you can get your salesperson to meet them face to face, or you do this LinkedIn social selling approach, which I talked about, where you used highly personalized content, which you think that's going to be useful for them to reach out to them. That's what I would recommend, Dinesh. Guys, I think we are out of time. So again, I mean, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or through Ankita. Happy to answer any questions if something is still present in your mind. Sorry, we're kind of out of time now.
All
Ankita,
right.
back to you.
Thanks, Kingshuk, for this interactive session. Great webinar full of useful tips. And for all the audience, I have an interesting storytelling workshop coming up in Noida on 28th of January by Subinder Khurana. For more details, please visit nasscom.in/events. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kingshuk, for your time and efforts.
Thank you, Ankita. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. It was a pleasure being with you. Thanks. Bye-bye.